When I asked for a raise after covering for 3 laid-off coworkers, my director laughed and said, "Raises are for people we actually want to keep." He slammed my report on the table and added, "I'd fire you now if I could find someone dumber to replace you." I simply said, "I understand." Last night, he opened his inbox to a message he'll never be able to unsend. My name's Dan. I'm 41 now, but this story started when I was 38 and working as a senior logistics coordinator at a mid-sized medical supply company in Dayton, Ohio. We were the type of company that kept hospitals stocked with things you don't think about until you need them: gauze for bags, wound kits. Boring stuff to most people. But it paid the bills. Or at least it used to. Before COVID, we had a solid team. I wasn't management, but I ran the floor in terms of logistics. I knew the whole supply chain inside out, from China ports to Kentucky warehouses to Cleveland trauma units. I didn't talk much at meetings, but when things hit the fan, they came to me. My direct supervisor, Dave Bressler, liked to take credit for my work in front of execs, but I didn't care at the time. Let him have his spotlight. I had a mortgage, 2 kids, and a wife who worked nights as a nurse. I didn't need recognition, just a paycheck and peace. Then came the layoffs. 3 people from my team were cut in early 2022. No warning. HR handed them cardboard boxes like they were expired inventory. I remember watching Monica cry as she packed up. She had a kid with cerebral palsy. And Josh, he just finished chemo and was finally coming back to full hours. Gone. Just like that. They didn't replace any of them. Guess who inherited all their work? I didn't complain. At first. I worked 12-hour days without overtime. I missed my daughter's piano recital and my son's first Little League game because I was buried in rerouting shipment delays and fixing Dave's screw-ups. I handled it because I believed that loyalty meant something. That belief died on a rainy Thursday afternoon in April. I walked into Dave's office with a printed report: weekend shipment losses minimized by my late-night rerouting. I had actual numbers to show. I'd saved the company nearly $78,000 in 2 weeks by doing work that used to belong to 3 other people. I waited for him to finish his call. He motioned for me to sit down, didn't even look at me. "Dave," I started, calm and polite, "I know we're tight on staff, but I've been pulling 60-hour weeks for the last few months. I've taken on Monica's and Josh's accounts, and I was wondering if we could discuss a raise." He finally looked up. Not with empathy. Not with interest. With amusement. He chuckled. Loud. Too loud. "Dan," he said, leaning back in his chair, hands behind his head like a smug college frat boy, "raises are for people we actually want to keep." Then he picked up my report, my work, and slammed it down on his desk. "Truth is, I'd fire you now if I could find someone dumber to replace you." I sat there staring at him. Heart pounding. Face hot. I wanted to yell, throw something, walk out. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "I understand." He waved his hand like I was some fly buzzing around his head. "Close the door behind you." I walked out of that office different than I walked in. Something inside me broke. For the next 2 months, I played the part. Showed up on time. Got coffee with the team. Attended meetings, took notes. But underneath the routine, I was watching. Listening. Digging. I stopped seeing myself as an employee. I started thinking like an enemy. I spent my nights building a private folder. Backups of emails, screenshots, spreadsheets, everything. I knew things. A lot of things. I had proof that Dave had altered shipping dates to fudge performance numbers. I had email trails showing how he blamed team failures on me when I was on vacation. And most damning, I had copies of internal contracts with a shell company called Blue Cap Ventures LLC. See, a few months back I noticed irregular invoices passing through our expense system. Blue Cap was getting paid $42,000 a month for logistics consultation. But none of us had ever heard of them. I dug deeper. Their registered address? A strip mall P.O. box in Chillicothe. Their contact phone? A burner number registered to no one. The real kicker? The bank account matched one connected to Dave's sister. Different last name. But I found her LinkedIn. She worked retail. No logistics background. It didn't stop there. I found copies of old shipment reports that Dave had manipulated to make it look like his budget cuts were increasing efficiency. He was pocketing corporate bonuses while quietly offshoring some warehouse routing to third parties, at higher costs but under different cost centers to hide the bleed. He was stealing from the company. And I had every breadcrumb. Now, I could have just gone to HR. But anyone who's worked long enough knows that HR protects executives, not workers. I needed a cleaner hit. A message that would actually land. So I created a Gmail alias with no traceable IP. masked by VPN and routed through a Wi-Fi network parked in the Kroger lot near my house. I crafted one email. No subject. No intro. Just attachments, PDFs, screenshots, spreadsheets. Then I wrote one line. If I'm too dumb to replace, I must be smart enough to follow the money. I sent it to the CFO, the COO, the CEO, the entire board, and every senior department head. Then I waited. The fallout came fast. By Monday morning, Dave was on leave. By Wednesday, his office was cleared out. No goodbyes. No announcement. Just gone. That same week, an internal audit team showed up from out of state. They locked down accounts, hauled out hard drives, canceled vendor contracts. Turns out Blue Cap Ventures had been funneling money for almost 18 months. Dave had taken over $600,000 through fake consultations and padded logistics reports. The kicker? His sister was cooperating to save herself. She flipped on him faster than anyone expected. But here's the part that stays with me. About a month later, I was in line at Speedway grabbing a coffee when I heard someone behind me say, "Dan?" It was Dave. Except it wasn't Dave anymore. It was the ghost of him. Same face, different life. He looked hollow. He had a stain on his shirt. He smelled like beer at 9 a.m. "Hey man," he said, almost smiling. "Crazy how things turned out, huh?" I didn't smile. He leaned in, whispered like we were old friends. "You did this, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Just stared at him. "You think you won?" he asked. "You think you won?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. Then said, "You should have just given me the raise." And I walked out. After the run-in at Speedway, I thought that would be the last time I ever saw Dave. I figured he'd get charged, maybe do some time and disappear from my life. But people like him don't go quietly. 3 weeks after that morning, I started getting strange calls. No one would speak. Just silence. I'd hang up. They'd call back the next day, same number. I blocked it. Then it switched to a new number. Then another. Always around 10 p.m., right as I was putting the kids to bed. One night I picked up and said, "Who is this?" The voice that came through was low, angry. "Definitely Dave. You're not done, Dan. You just think you are." Then he hung up. I didn't tell my wife at first. Didn't want to scare her. She was already stressed working overtime at the hospital. Our daughter was dealing with anxiety issues since she caught on that something had been off at home. But then things escalated. One morning I came outside and saw all 4 tires on my truck had been slashed. Police came, filed a report. No fingerprints. No cameras on my street. Insurance covered it, but it rattled me. The next week I got an email at my personal address. No subject line. Just a photo of my son walking home from school. The sender name was gibberish. No message. Just the photo. That's when I called the cops again. This time they took it more seriously. We installed security cams. I bought a home alarm. I stopped letting the kids walk anywhere alone. My wife, Jenna, was furious when she found out. Not at me, for not telling her sooner, but at how bad things had gotten. "He's not just some angry ex-boss," she said. "He's unhinged." She was right. At work I got promoted. I was offered a director-level position, the same title Dave had. I accepted, but with hesitation. I never wanted to be in management, not like that. But the company said they were cleaning house, rebuilding. I agreed, but only if I could bring in my own team. First thing I did? I hired back Monica and Josh. Monica cried when I offered her the job. Josh had been driving Uber to survive. When I called, he said, "You don't know what this means to me, man." I knew exactly what it meant. Because I'd been in that hole too. We rebuilt the department from the ground up. For the first time, people were happy to come to work. We had real meetings, honest communication, and bonuses that made sense. But while work improved, home life got harder. The stress took a toll on my marriage. Jenna didn't sleep well. Neither did I. Every knock on the door felt like a threat. Every flicker on the security camera made my heart jump. Then one night, around 3 a.m., the alarm blared. Someone was at the back door. I grabbed the bat from under my bed and ran downstairs. Jenna called 911. I saw a shadow sprint across the yard. The camera caught a glimpse, a hoodie, jeans, and a limp. I recognized the limp. Dave had torn his ACL years back playing beer league softball. Walked with a hitch ever since. The police came again. Same routine. Searched the area. Nothing. But this time, they agreed to place a patrol car on our street for a few nights. Not permanent. Just enough to try and scare him off. It worked, for a while. I started digging again. I wanted to know how bad it really was with Dave. He hadn't been charged yet, but word around the office was that he was under investigation. The company had handed over everything to the state attorney's office, but these things take time. Meanwhile, he'd lost his house. His wife left him. I heard through a former coworker that he'd been living out of a cheap motel near the highway. One of those places with flickering signs and bed bugs. That should have been enough punishment. But guys like Dave don't believe in consequences. They believe the world owes them something. One night, I got home late after working through inventory audits. Jenna was asleep. The house was quiet. I opened my laptop and saw an email from an old Gmail account I hadn't used in years. The subject line read, "Let's see how your bosses like the truth about you." There were attachments. Fake invoices. Altered shipment reports. Screenshots that looked like I had been the one skimming off the top. He'd used the same tricks he had used to cover his own trail. But this time he made me the target. He forged documents using my old login credentials from the shared server. I recognized some of the files. He must have copied them months before he got fired. All he had to do was swap a few dates, alter a few names. Looked real. Too real. And I knew what he was going to do next. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next morning, I walked into the office before anyone else showed up. I went straight to our compliance officer, Margot. She was new, ex-FBI forensic accountant type. No nonsense. I trusted her. I laid it all out, every threat, every incident, and finally the forged emails. To her credit, she didn't panic. She pulled an IT. They traced metadata. We flagged timestamps. Compared original documents to fakes. One of the forged invoices had a timestamp from 2 months after I had left that system. It was sloppy. He'd made a mistake. Margot looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't worry. He just lit the match that's going to burn him." By the end of that week, the company filed a formal criminal complaint. I heard the district attorney had been waiting for one last piece to fully build the case. Turns out Dave wasn't just guilty of embezzlement. He was also about to be hit with charges for stalking, identity fraud, and cyber harassment. But it wasn't over yet. Because before they could arrest him, he vanished. Disappeared off the grid. No credit card usage. No motel records. Nothing. It was like he'd never existed. But I know better. Men like Dave don't disappear. They wait. And I'm still waiting for his next move. 2 months went by. Quiet. Too quiet. No emails. No phone calls. No slash tires. No sightings. It almost felt like it was over. Like Dave had finally given up or moved on. But that's not how real revenge works. It festers. By mid-June, I was starting to breathe again. Jenna and I had begun couples therapy, mostly to talk through the trauma and rebuild trust. The kids were sleeping better. I even started running again, something I hadn't done since before the layoffs. Life was finding rhythm. Then one morning, Margot called me into her office. She looked pale. Her desk was usually clean and neat, but papers were scattered everywhere. She turned her monitor toward me. "This just came through our whistleblower inbox," she said. It was a long email. No sender name, but the address looked like an official company tip line. The email claimed that I had quietly moved Blue Cap Ventures routing contracts overseas to a cousin in Texas, and that I'd kept the scam going even after Dave got fired. It included more forged files, even a fake voice memo that almost sounded like me discussing keeping things under the radar. Someone had used AI voice tools to clone my voice. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who had sent it. But Margot, thankfully, had already started dissecting the lies. "This is someone desperate," she said. "And they're getting more reckless." The company opened an internal audit, again just to be safe. It didn't matter that I had nothing to hide. I still had to sit through interviews, hand over my phone, and endure the whispers in the break room. Suddenly, I wasn't the hero who helped clean up the mess. I was a suspect again. That pressure started creeping into my home. Jenna was supportive, but I could see the wear in her eyes. "You said it was over," she whispered one night while folding laundry. "You promised." "I thought it was," I said. "I really did." Then one Saturday afternoon, my son came running inside crying. His bike had been smashed, like completely destroyed. Bent wheels, cut brake lines, broken seat. "Someone did it on purpose, Dad," he said. "It wasn't an accident." I went numb. This wasn't just a vendetta anymore. This was Dave trying to break my entire world, piece by piece. I sat alone in my garage that night. Lights off. Cold beer untouched. Just silence and the sound of crickets outside. My hands were shaking. I was done waiting. Done playing defense. It was time to end this. I hired a private investigator. Not a cheap one. Not the kind that works from behind a computer all day. This guy, Gene used to track fugitives for bounty hunters. He didn't blink when I told him what I needed. He found Dave in 10 days. He'd been living under a fake name in a tiny town outside Lexington, Kentucky, using cash, sleeping in a rundown RV behind a bar that didn't ask questions. He'd grown a beard, dyed his hair. He was even telling people he was a consultant who got screwed by a former company. But that wasn't the twist. The real twist? He'd been talking to a reporter. Gene found out Dave had been reaching out to journalists with a fake story, claiming the company was corrupt, that I was a corporate thief who had framed him to save myself. He had a whole false timeline written out with fake docs, phony contacts, and dramatic quotes like, "I was the fall guy." And some freelancer out of Indianapolis had taken the bait. The reporter emailed our company for comment. HR forwarded it to me. They wanted to know if I had anything to disclose. I was furious, but more than that, I was scared. If the story got published, even if it was fake, it could ruin my name. Most people believe the first version they hear. Retractions don't go viral. That's when Gene said something I won't forget. If this guy wants a war of lies, hit him with the one thing he can't fake, truth. So I did. With Margot's help, I got permission to go public. I compiled the real documents, internal emails, audit reports, IP logs, camera footage, witness statements. I didn't send them to the media. I sent them to the reporter directly. But not alone. I added a short video clip of Dave, caught on our home security camera weeks ago, limping through my backyard with a crowbar in hand. The police hadn't released it publicly due to the investigation, but I still had the file. The reporter called me 2 hours later. He apologized. Deeply. He said Dave had been convincing, but this was something else. He's unwell, he said. And dangerous. Then the reporter did something I didn't expect. He published a story anyway. But it wasn't about me. It was about Dave. Title: Former Logistics Director under Fraud, Harassment and Stalking Investigation after Faking Whistleblower Reports. The article didn't just end Dave's little game. It exposed him to the world. And now everyone knew what he really was. But this story isn't over. Because the moment that article went live, Dave stopped hiding. He sent me one last message. No threats. No insults. Just 6 chilling words: "Now I've got nothing to lose." After that last message, "Now I've got nothing to lose," I started sleeping downstairs with a loaded bat next to the couch. Jenna made me promise not to get a gun. She was scared it would make things worse. I understood. But part of me still regrets that promise. The morning after that article dropped, we found a dead squirrel nailed to our mailbox. Its head was missing. Our daughter screamed when she saw it. That was the moment Jenna broke. She took the kids to her sister's house 2 towns over and didn't come back for a week. She said they needed space and that maybe I should figure out how to end this once and for all. I didn't blame her. This wasn't just about a sick man anymore. This was about protecting the people I loved. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I baited him. I sent Dave a message through the same Gmail alias he used before. I made it look like an anonymous company contact. I told him there was a folder full of unreleased documents hidden on a flash drive, left behind at the Dayton warehouse during the last sweep. I gave him a time. Friday, 3 a.m. I gave him a place, loading dock door, northeast corner. I told him the door would be left unlocked. And then I waited. But I didn't go alone. I had Gene. And I had a detective, Sergeant Carla Rowe, who had been working the stalking case and following every report. She believed me from the start. This time she got a warrant. That Friday morning, as expected, Dave showed up. Hood pulled low, gloves on, crowbar in hand. Gene watched from the alley in an unmarked car. Carla and another officer waited inside the warehouse. Dave never saw it coming. The moment he stepped inside the bay door, floodlights hit him. Officers shouted. He ran, but he didn't get far. He slipped trying to scale the fence behind the loading dock. Broke his ankle. They arrested him on the spot. Read him his rights. Bagged the crowbar, his phone, and a pocket knife he had in his waistband. And just like that, it was over. The fallout was ugly. Dave was charged with felony stalking, criminal impersonation, destruction of property, and obstruction. The fraud charges from the original audit finally stuck too. Once the forged voice memos and fake whistleblower files were linked to him, it was a wrap. He took a plea deal. 7 years. No parole for 4. He tried to cry in court. Blamed alcohol, stress, the company. Said he was manipulated by a toxic work culture. The judge didn't buy a word of it. And as I sat behind him in the courtroom watching him get led away in cuffs, I didn't feel joy. I felt relief. But I also felt empty. Because the truth is, none of this left me clean. My marriage never fully recovered. Jenna moved back in a month after the sentencing, but something had changed. The damage had settled in her bones. She looked at me differently, like I was the man who brought danger into her home, even if I hadn't asked for it. We went through the motions for another year. Family dinners, school plays, vacations where she scrolled on her phone while I watched the kids. One night, after the kids went to bed, she said, "You did what you had to do. But I can't unsee what it turned you into." We didn't fight. No shouting. No slamming doors. Just paperwork. 6 months later, she moved to Columbus with the kids. Now I see them every other weekend. My daughter Emma won't speak much during our visits. I think she's still scared. Not of Dave. Of me. Of everything that happened and the way I changed. My son Trevor tries to be strong. But I can tell he's tired of pretending things are fine. And I don't blame either of them. Work kept me afloat for a while. Promotions came. People respected me again. I became the guy who cleaned up the biggest mess in company history. But it never felt like a win. I stopped going to happy hours. Stopped taking calls after 7 p.m. I go home, microwave leftovers, and fall asleep on the couch half the time. Sometimes I think about the moment in Dave's office, when he slammed my report on the desk and said, "I'd fire you now if I could find someone dumber to replace you." That moment started everything. And part of me still wishes I had walked out and never looked back. But I didn't. I stayed. I fought. And I won. But the truth is, revenge doesn't fix things. It just rearranges the damage. The last I heard of Dave, he was denied parole after 4 years. Tried to argue that he'd found God in prison and was ready to make peace. The board didn't buy it. Apparently, he'd been caught intimidating other inmates with forged letters and threats. Old habits die hard. Me, I'm just trying to be better. Bit by bit. I show up for the kids when I can. I don't lie anymore. Not to them, not to myself. I sleep with the doors locked and the cameras on, even though I know he's not coming back. And sometimes, in the quiet, I whisper those same words I said to him years ago. "You should have just given me the raise."